Hello and welcome to the Aussie Football Passport. It is a new European season upon us, so I thought it's time to actually get the podcast going back more regularly. And to kick us off for this new European season, I have a guest. It is Scott from the Brisbane Football Review. How are you, Scott?
I'm fantastic, Alex. Great to get into another big season of European football. Now that the World Cup is finally behind us, unfortunately, we can get back into the everyday routine of the league football.
Exactly right. So we get to see our Socceroos and Matildas, of course, playing club football regularly. Hopefully, that's what we really want because we want them to be getting consistent game and form leading into national team selection. Of course, I'll look to do a Matildas episode down the track, but for now, we're going to focus on the Socceroos this season. Do a bit of a European season previews, some big talking points to discuss with you later on, Scott. But before we jump into all of that, what I'll do is I'll get you to plug your wonderful podcast, the Brisbane Football Review.
They can find us at the Brisbane Football Review on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can search our name on any of those platforms. Our podcast is out on Apple and Spotify as well. Just search Brisbane Football Review. So you can contact us at brisbanefootballreview@gmail.com. So we are available on all platforms, and we have a number of different shows coming up across the A-League's preview coming up as well as the end of the NPL season. So a lot to keep an eye on locally, but we're here to talk about the overseas matters now.
Yeah, that's right. So if you want to know anything about Queensland football, make sure you check out Brisbane Football Review. But it is that time, and look, I don't think there's anywhere else we can start but the three massive transfers that have happened in the last week for a combined, I think, close to 90 million Australian dollars. Nestory Irankunda to Sporting Lisbon in the Portuguese league, Lucas Herrington to Hull FC in the Premier League. Wow, how good to have another Premier League player. We've actually got two, but we'll get to that in a minute. And Alessandro Circati off to Benfica. So we're going to have players on opposing sides in the Lisbon derby. How cool is that, Scott?
I mean, surely some broadcaster in Australia is eyeing up the rights for the Portuguese league. Surely, if we've got the two sides of the Lisbon derby and potentially another player joining, if you believe some of the rumours as well, that is going to be a must-see game. It's always one of the big games in Europe to begin with. I'm not sure it's overly familiar for Australian viewers, but if Circati is on one side and Irankunda is on the other, I think it's going to become one very, very quickly.
Oh, incredible. And Stan, if you're listening, be in sports, someone please get the
Any of them.
Portuguese league. Yeah, any of them. Preferably one that I've already got a subscription to for selfish reasons and probably for everyone else. But the Portuguese league, I think, Scott, let's be honest, an absolute production factory for young players, turning them into world class players that have moved particularly to the big leagues. You know, you just have to look someone you're well familiar with, Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, coming through Sporting. So, I mean, it feels like it's a great move for Aaron Kunda, isn't it? In particular for a winger of his profile.
Certainly is. It's a perfect league to go to for a young up and coming player, isn't it? It's not in the top five leagues, but it's just below that caliber of league, isn't it? And just beneath the French league and the like in sixth spot. So it's a massive league and it's got big clubs with big traditions in it and big expectations as well. If you're at Sporting and you're at Benfica, the expectations are you're there to win the league. You're there to win trophies every single year. You're there to play in the Champions League and then do well in the Champions League. And as you said, players that are in those clubs that have done well have moved very quickly onto big leagues in the Premier League, La Liga, etc. So it is a place where you can move very quickly from. So if Irankunda and Chakati can go there and play regular football both in European competition and in the Portuguese league, they may not be there all that long in terms of moving on to an even bigger league. We know that both players had interest from other clubs as well during this time, so it could be a stepping stone for them. But at the moment, it's a perfect place to be in terms of being in a league just below the top five leagues, but a league where if you perform well, you're going to get noticed really quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to note. Yes, it's not a top five league, and a lot of people will go, "Oh, but I've had people tell me Nestory and Irankunda should have stayed in the championship." I disagree. I completely think that this move is really good because, as you said, Scott, he's going to have the pressure of playing for silverware every season, playing on the front foot where teams are going to be, playing the low block or the parking the bus, and that means Nestory is going to have to find different ways of breaking down opposition defenses with his play, and I think that's a really important set of skills that he will hopefully learn, and then he can obviously selfishly transfer that into a green and gold jumper. I think that's what we really want to see, isn't it, Scott?
It's the ideal situation is he does do those things, then bring that into the national team. But it's also a case of it's a real growth opportunity for these two guys. We'll get to Lucas as well in a minute because these are
Mhm.
in the same boat. They're all moving to new environments, not just football environments, new countries, new cultures, all these things you have to get used to. And that can only make them better people and players in the long term as well. So to broaden your horizons and really challenge yourself. The easy option for Nestory would have been to stay in the championship at Watford, hopefully for his sake, score 20 goals there and move to the Premier League that way. But this is a way he's challenging himself. Circati probably could have stayed in the Serie A. They're challenging themselves. I think that's really encouraging that they're not just staying in their comfort zone. I think if you really want to get to the top level in anything, particularly in this game, you've got to challenge yourself, and they're doing that. And I really like that part of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree, and I think, just to touch on Circati in particular, because probably spent a little bit of time on Irankunda, but with Circati, I think the important skill set that he's gonna learn is to play on the front foot there with Benfica, and learning how to play some long balls in behind to try and get those low blocks to move about in certain ways. So, that a little bit more proactive defending as well. So these are all skills that I think are really important. The pressure there, of course, and working under a world class manager in Marco Silva will be, or world class might be a little bit, but a former Premier League manager nonetheless, and a reputable manager, I think, is all sort of things that will help Circati out above and beyond what he's already learnt at Parma.
Absolutely, Marco Silva, having coached in the Premier League, would have contacts at that level as well. So if he goes to Benfica and performs well there, which we all kind of hope he doesn't, think he probably
Mm.
will, that can really open doors for you. If your coach knows people in that league, then that's the next logical step for Chakatis. And if he goes well here in Benfica, that'd be the next logical step. So having a coach who can open doors there for you can only help.
Yeah, exactly right. And the Portuguese league seems to be one that a lot more people are paying attention to, particular scouts from the bigger leagues that are looking for those sort of point of difference signings, because a lot of the big clubs in the bigger leagues are now sort of finding players. Uh, well, they're pinching players from their own leagues, aren't they, really? So the teams that aren't quite at the top level have to find different ways of scouting players, and opens opportunities for the likes of Irankunda and Circati, and probably neat segue to move on to Lucas Herrington and how Hull picked him up, really. I
Before we do,
guess,
it's not a
yeah,
bad thing that both these guys are playing in Portugal, given that the next World Cup will be in around that part of the world. So getting
true.
used to that part of the world and the surroundings and the culture there could be very valuable for those boys in 4 years' time. Fingers crossed they're healthy at that point.
Yes, that's right, and a perspective I'd not thought of, Scott. So thank you very much for that. That's a nice little fresh take there. So yeah, I guess Lucas Harrington going to Hull, and I know that we've both had a listen to Football 360's excellent episode with Lucas Harrington's agent Buddy Farah, and the decision around going to Hull rather than perhaps a bigger club. We know that Barcelona and Liverpool and the like were all sniffing around Lucas, but the, they, Buddy talked about the decision to go to Hull, and uh, it was really well thought out. And I think it's a really good opportunity for Lucas. So I think you probably agree, Scott.
Well, he's going to have his work cut out for him. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
They are there. They kind of scraped through getting through the playoffs last year, so he's going to have his work cut out for him. But I really like the confidence of the young man, just to say, no, I'm going to back myself to go in there and make a difference. I brought two centre backs in there, but almost brought a whole new team of young players that they're trying to put together. So it may start slowly for them, but the experience that he's going to get defending against these players he's going to come up against, they will come up against every single week in the Premier League. That's only going to help him in terms of, I think Man United is his first game this
yeah.
week. I don't know if Benjamin Sesko is fit or not, but what a player to make your Premier League debut against a player like that. And then it only gets more challenge from there given the other strikers around the competition. So he's up against it. He's challenging himself, but I like the fact that, again, he's prepared to put himself out there to go out of the comfort zone. The easy choice would have been to go to a Barcelona and go out on loan, or go to your club Liverpool and probably
Mm.
go out on loan or not play much there. So here, the one thing he can guarantee, he's going to play.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to play. They've signed him. I mean, they're not a club who are going to spend 20 million or whatever it was, euros that is, to bring a player in and sit him on the bench. He's going to play. So I really like that for him. And if it doesn't work out at Hull in terms of them staying in the Premier League, if he can perform well, he already, as we heard in that interview on Football 360, a number of clubs were tracking him, and his numbers have been off the charts in the MLS. So, and most clubs don't forget those things. Once you've identified a player, you remember those things. And if he shows he can perform in the Premier League, even if they go down, doors could open up for him as well. So I'm really happy for him to make this move. It's bizarre that 12 months ago he was preparing for a preseason here in Brisbane, and now he's gone to Colorado, gone to a World Cup, and is now going to be playing in the Premier League on Saturday night. It's quite bizarre, but it's a fantastic move for him.
What a crazy 12 months, that young man, and it just feels like he's taken it in his stride, doesn't he? He's incredibly mature for an 18-year-old, both on and off the field. He's just, I can't stop raving about him, but I'll try to.
Well, that's one thing that will help him as well, is that everything about him off to when you hear him talk, you just know what a calm character he is. In these like moments for Hull where they will be under pressure, that calmness could be really crucial for them. And I think that's where he can really excel.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a, to use a cliche, it's an attribute you can't teach, isn't it? And it's going to be so crucial in that pressure cooker, because you'd expect Hull to be in the relegation fight for most of this upcoming EPL season. Apologies, Hull fans, if you're listening. But it's just going to be, look, he's going to be in the trenches, to use another cliche there. So, look, I think Harrington's, that calmness, all of those attributes are gonna pay gonna pay dividends for him no matter what this season. So, really excited about that. Now, a bit of a left field option. I know that, discussion point, we talked, I made mention that there was another Australian in the Premier League. Of course, that's Rafael Borges Rodriguez. We'll get into a discussion about fullbacks later, but he's another player in the Premier League, and with Coventry. So that'll be interesting to see if he does actually get a run with Coventry this season. I mean, he was out on loan at Wigan last season. So do you think he'll be in Frank Lampard's plans for this upcoming season, Scott?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Will he still be at Coventry City when the window
Yeah.
closes in a couple of weeks' time? Because they have strengthened as well in the Premier League. And as you said, he was out on loan at Wigan last year. So it remains to be seen if he does stick around, how much playing time he would get. He might play in the League Cup or whatever it's called these days. But I think a loan move for him back to the championship might be the best thing for him. I would, from a national team perspective, I'd rather see him playing every week in the championship than just playing 5 minutes here or there in dead rubber games or when games are decided in the Premier League. So I think it's better for him to get that loan move, but we'll have to wait and see what Frank Lampard decides to do there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he's got that versatility. Of course, he played a lot of his football in the A League as a winger, as a forward. But at Wigan last season, he was actually playing a bit as a wing back. So, be interesting to see, you know, what Frank Lampard sees in him as a player, whether he plays either of those positions, or if he does make the move, whether he goes into, whether he solidifies one or the other, because that can be a bit of a curse when you're a utility kind of player like that. So, in terms of other transfers, Scott, have there been any others that have caught your eye in terms of the Socceroos that have moved on?
Been interesting, right? Because since the World Cup, so many of our
Mm.
World Cup squad have moved on. We're focused on three right now. We've also got Paul Okonengsler and Patrick Beach who've
Yeah.
moved to top five leagues. And you've got Cam Devlin, Nishan Valupale, Jackson Irvine, Adrian Hrustic, Awa Mobile, Tete Yengi have all moved as well. And if Mo Toure and Harry Suter, if their prospective moves do end up eventuating, that's half of our World Cup squad that have made moves on the back of the World Cup, which is quite remarkable. But even some of the other moves beyond that have been really interesting. You've seen Sam Klein move to Germany. He's made his debut in the last week. That's a really interesting one. The two guys who've gone to Japan, Dan Hall and Eli Adams, have started off
Mm.
playing over there. That's a really intriguing one as well. I think Luka Ivanovic might have made his first start for San Jose today as well, which is interesting. But then there's a couple of other guys. I'll leave the Scotland guys alone because I think we are going to talk about the
Yeah.
Scottish League in a moment. But there's two other guys who've moved to England in the lower leagues that are very much off the radar. Lucas Smith was completely
Mm.
bypassed by the A League, ends up going to Finland scoring goals for fun. Now he's at Notts County. And Kayla Majeka-Dunmi, who was at Perth, not really playing, spends 5 minutes in the NPL and then goes on a trial over to Swindon and ends up not only earning a contract, but starting the first game of the season. So there's some very intriguing stories that once you get beyond the headlines which we've just focused on and all the Socceroos at the World Cup, there's some other very intriguing moves that have happened for some Australian players over the last few weeks who may or may not be part of the future. We'll have to wait and see, but thought those two might be worth mentioning.
Yeah, definitely. The more left field, I guess, moves, as you said, and ones that are a bit off the radar, but they could, be on the path to getting to the top leagues or, at least making a name for themselves overseas, particularly when you look at our striking stocks. It is quite strong, but Lucas Smythe, if he can just keep doing what he's doing at, or transfer the form he had in Finland to Notts County, he could, he's in the English pyramid now. He could quite well rocket himself up there. We've seen that before with the likes of Jamie Vardy and those, not that I'm saying that he is Jamie Vardy, but the way that Jamie Vardy
Yeah.
climbed the English leagues from non-league football to the Premier League and winning the Premier League, it's possible. I'm not saying that he
Yeah.
will do it, but it's certainly
Yeah.
possible.
I guess it's a broader point. Our depth is actually, I think it's stronger than we've ever had before in terms, not at the high end level. I think the
Mm.
2006, 2010 generation, that was a higher level of a group across the board. When you look at the Socceroos squad, every time it was picked, they were basically all in the top five leagues or in the Netherlands. So it was a much
Mm.
higher range of players. We're getting players to that level now, but the tier below, we're having more players in leagues maybe 6 to 12 in European football where we are having more and more players compete. And I think that's a really encouraging thing to see. We have seen so many players going over there. I should mention Joe Gauchi's loan as well. I think that's a really
Oh,
good move for
yes.
him, and
Yep.
and maybe he might want to make that a move, a more permanent move, given that Aston Villa have signed a new goalkeeper this week who did well in
Yes.
the World Cup. So maybe
Yeah.
that's not going to happen for him at Aston Villa, but a move to the Championship, much like with Borges Rodriguez, might not be the worst thing for him either.
Definitely not, yeah, and of course, that is Zion Suzuki that's signed by Aston Villa, but Aston Villa have a tendency to let players rot on the bench with no explanation, but anyway, I won't get into that rant. That's one for a Liverpool podcast. Um, but yes, thanks, Scott. There's some really good moves there. The depth is incredible in Australian football right now for our men, which is just great to see, but the Scottish League, as we made mention earlier, it's in full swing now. We've had the League Cup games. We've had a couple of league games. We've had the teams that are playing in Europe trying to go through their qualification. And a couple of points I wanted to raise. Lockie Rose, 4 goals in 7 games. He has hit the ground running at Dundee United, hasn't he, Scott?
Yes, the A-League All-Stars are off to a very good start in the front third up there at Dundee United with Lockie Rose doing a very nice job
Yeah.
there. Daniel Benny moving from QPR on loan as well as Zach Sapson
Yes.
doing well. So I think Jesse Randall, the Kiwis over there as well. So as I said, the front third's very much the A-League All-Stars, but Lockie Rose has done remarkably well. And it's somewhat of a surprise, but it really shouldn't be given he's in his prime right now and he's coming off a very good year in the A-League and he certainly has hit the ground running over there. And could very well be somebody that Tony Popovich might be keeping an eye on because his form to start the year has been very impressive.
Yeah, he should. And look, the door's slightly ajar with Mitchell Duke retiring. There's sort of that, maybe that third striker spot, if you like. Obviously, Mo Toure and, well, I mean, Nestory and Irankunda playing as a 9. Let's forget about that. But Tete Yengi, who seems to be the preferred second striker, if you like. Maybe there's that opening there for Lockie Rose. It would be interesting to see. He'll be battling his teammate, you'd imagine, Zach Sapsford, who seems to be playing a little bit wider. We saw him do that from time to time at Dundee last season, but with Lockie Rose joining the club, it seems to be a more permanent thing. So that seems to be an interesting dynamic that's playing out at club level there for Dundee as well.
It also feels like he's a bit more rotational option this year. It felt like last year he
Mm,
played a lot more regular, but the addition of the other players from the A League, Randall, Rose and also Benny has seemed like it's taken some of his minutes away. So it's been a bit more of a rotational option. So maybe a
Mm.
bit more competition for places as well might be a beneficial thing for him in the long run as well. But between that front third, they're going quite well at the moment, Dundee United.
Yeah, definitely, which is great to see. And now another player that's a bit left field, Jake Gerwood-Reich. So he made the move to Motherwell. He actually captained the side in the League Cup. I think they did get beaten from memory in that game, but captain already nonetheless. I mean, it's pretty promising. I mean, obviously, again, it would have been a rotated side that they played in that League Cup fixture from what I can remember. But yeah, he captained the side, so there's obviously quite high thinking of him already in such a short amount of time being at the club.
Yeah, they lost to the mighty Stenhousemuir. I hope I pronounced that
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah,
1-0 in the
yeah,
Scottish League Cup. But that's one move I did not see coming. He
mm,
was at Sydney FC and moved over to the MLS, where I don't think he got too much football for. I think it was Salt Lake City. And then he ends up
yeah,
coming, oh, St. Louis League, I beg your pardon. Then he ends up back
yep.
in the A League at Auckland. And then does okay there, and then he gets a move to Motherwell, where all of a sudden he's starting every week and captaining the club.
Yep.
It's a move that I didn't see coming, but it's one he's taken really well. And we might get to some issues about the centre backs to the national team coming forward with injuries, and maybe he's one who might put himself firmly in the frame for the upcoming Asian Cup. Because if you're starting every week in the Scottish Premier League and you're captaining the club, you're doing something right.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. And I do wonder, Scott, because from memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, he did play most of his time at Sydney in that sort of holding midfield role. And I think he might have went to St. Louis as a midfielder. And it wasn't until Steve Corica got him at Auckland and put him into that centre back role that he seems to have got. I mean, he was all right at Auckland. He was in and out of that team too, wasn't he? But maybe it's that move to centre back that's really benefited him.
From memory, he at
Mm,
Sydney he played a little bit of centre midfield, like you said, a little bit of centre
mm,
back, a little bit of right
okay.
back. He was a young
Yep.
player coming through. I don't know what happened at St. Louis, but in the A League, as you said last year with Auckland, he was basically there alongside Dan Hall or Nando Pinaka all season and did pretty well for that Auckland side that ended up winning the grand final. And yeah, I think centre back looks like it's going to be his position where he's going to be able to make a good career for himself. And so he's taken European football really well. And that's
Mm,
again, it's a really encouraging thing that again that pathway from MLS to the A League, which or to European football, beg your pardon, that a number of players are taking now out of Australia is looking like it works really well. So that's because Riley McGree did it as well. Of course, he was over in the
yes.
MLS briefly, and he's doing sensationally in the championship. So it feels like that's a pathway that does work really well for Australian players.
It does, yeah, and I think it's one we're going to see a lot more of going into the future, given the recent moves as well. So, going back to European football, let's talk a little bit about continental football because we've had some qualifiers happening over the last couple of weeks, and Viking, the wonderful Norwegian club where we've got Gianni Stensnes and Nick D'Agostino. Of course, D'Agostino has returned from his ill-fated loan spell at Brisbane Roar, as you well know. Well, I mean, it wasn't ill-fated. He scored well, but the injury just was unfortunate for Nick. But Gianni Stensnes put in an incredible performance. Was it earlier this week, Scott, or was it last week?
Yes, it was. It was this week. It was
It was this week.
against
Okay,
Dinamo
yeah,
in the Champions League, right? It was
yeah,
they're playing off for a spot in the Champions League or group stage or whatever it's called. You know more about the Champions
mm,
League these days than me. My club, Man
yeah,
United, doesn't even not sure what it is, but we'll find out in a few weeks. But it seems like it's a good result for them. They've got to draw away from home to get themselves into the box position to get it through. And Yanni Stens has played 90 minutes at the back, so that's a
mm,
fantastic sign. If they are able to do that, having another player playing in the Champions League, it's a great opportunity for them because who knows who they may draw. It could be Irankunda versus Stensons for all we know in the Champions League. That'd be
yeah,
one to keep an eye on. But it'd be a great opportunity for them if they are able to see that through and get there. Same with Yaya Dukuli over there in Slovenia. I mean,
mm,
he only moved what a month or so ago. It was one we were talking about. So it was one
mm,
neither of us saw coming from him going from Adelaide over to there. But he's done well for them off the bench. I think he scored in the previous round as well, and they had a draw as well on the road. So both Viking and Dukuli's club are going to be back home in the second leg for a spot in the Champions League. And if we can get both of those players through to the Champions League group stage, what a great opportunity that is for both those players.
Yeah, wonderful opportunity. And again, we talk about stepping stones, and I mean, obviously, you don't want to say that, but it really is. Let's be honest. And by playing in the Champions League and putting in a good performance against a team that's in a different country at a perhaps a higher level is a wonderful way to get a move there, whether it be in the winter transfer window, of course, January, or the following year is a wonderful chance. And of course, we must return to Irankunda and Circati, who are both vying for European football as well. Irankunda for the Champions League, Circati for the Europa League. So again, two wonderful opportunities. They're not only just going to be playing domestically, they're going to be playing on the continent, and again, feeding into what we're saying. Looking down the line to moves for both of them if they have good seasons and they play well in the continental competitions, isn't it, Scott?
Certainly is. I think Irankunda and Sporting are locked into the Champions League group
Yeah.
stage. From memory, I think Benfica have got a two-legged playoff coming up to try and get into the Europa League group stage. So fingers crossed that Jakarta, you can firstly play in those games and then also get through and they can get to that group stage. You would expect them to do that. They're a big club,
Mm.
Benfica. And I think not being in the Champions League will really hurt them this year in terms of just a pride point of view. Having a great year last year and then not winning the league and now being in the Europa League probably will sting a little bit. So I imagine they'll want to go really deep in that competition. If they are able to do that, what an opportunity that is for Circati to test
Mm.
itself at the business end of a European competition. We have seen Australians win them before. Mark Schwarzer won this competition a few years ago, and others have as well. So it can be done, and what an opportunity this is. And Aaron Kunda in the Champions League is going to be, from an Australian perspective, that's going to be must see.
It's yeah, 100% because, if he scores, what great Michael Jackson celebration we're gonna get for starters, and then just him lighting it up on the Champions League. He just feels like a Champions League
Yeah.
night
Which
kind of
which
player.
Premier League defender is he going to sit on his backside as he runs past him and
Ugh.
scores
I'll
dribbles past?
take
I know which club I prefer it to happen to, but we'll see what
it.
does happen. He's the sort of player, as you said, who could light up the Champions League for Sporting Lisbon.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love him to run past Matthias Nunes at, Manchester City, but I have a feeling it might be
Yeah.
against one of the 4 defenders, from Liverpool. But anyway, let's not talk about that.
Either works
Now
for me.
yes, yeah, yeah, both on your, not so good list, shall we say. Um, Now we probably should get to some unfortunate news. There's been plenty of injury news, particularly with Jordan Boss giving an interview to Channel 10 in the last week saying that he is actually facing a 6-month layoff with that knee injury. The ACL is fine, a bit of bruising, but it is I think the cartilage got torn away and an MCL injury as well. So, not the kind of news we wanted to hear, but it will hopefully hopefully he's got the right diagnosis first and foremost. The surgery's been successful and the rehabilitation will be even more successful, but it does mean he will be cutting it fine for the Asian Cup, which leaves that left back spot wide open, doesn't it?
Well, firstly, what a great decision that was not to have a foul or a yellow card given in
Yeah.
that game in the World Cup. Given well, now what we know about the injury, but you're right, it does mean that Jordan Boss, if he is going to be at the Asia Cup, it's going to be a case where he is probably underdone in terms
Yeah.
of he might be physically fit, but match fit and match sharp are two very different things. And I wonder how fit he is, and it might even be as hard as it would be for Tony Popovich to do. It might even be depending on how long it takes. The best case for him, stay at final, get yourself
Yeah.
absolutely fully fit, get back into that side, play well in the back half of the year, and then make a move, which you probably would have done in this window if fit. So that's a terrible time for him that this has happened, given so many of his teammates have made moves to big European clubs, and he would have been right there in the mix to do so as well. So I do think he probably will be 50-50 at best to be at the Asia Cup. And I do wonder if for the long-term future of Jordan Boss, the national team player for the next 10 years, as much as we want him there for the Asia Cup, I wonder if it's not the best thing just to say you might have to miss this one. It depends on how the recovery goes, of course.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and yeah, he should get a pretty good. I imagine the Feyenoord medical department is quite good. They were the ones that picked up the extent of the injury. So, the Netherlands medical system is one of the best in the world. So it probably just comes down to now how Jordan Boss recovers. But In terms of left back options, we do, interestingly enough, have his brother Casey Boss as a potential option, and of course he's in Rotterdam at Excelsior, though one of the three clubs there, I believe, in the professional system in Netherlands football. He wasn't part of the matchday squad for Excelsior though in their season opener, so it does make me wonder: is he maybe just building up to a bit of fitness? Has he got a knock? Has he got the family trait of having injuries? So I hope not. But Scott, do you think Casey is a potential option for the left back role?
Well, firstly, fingers crossed that Jordan and Casey can line up on opposite sides of that derby during the season, because that would be a fantastic thing. We mentioned off the start of the show how good the Lisbon derby might be with Irankunda versus Circati. That could be another one to keep an eye on as well. Fingers crossed he is going to get more playing time for them over the course of the year, because he may be the most likely or best option for Australia to cover for that spot there at the fullback position. I don't know if you want to get into it right now, but we are a little bit
Yeah.
light on in terms of the fullbacks. Probably more options on the right than the left. Maybe some of them can cover both sides, but the left side we could really do with Casey Boss playing 20 games between now and the Asia Cup selection, and him being ready and available to potentially fill in for his brother or go alongside of him to the Asia Cup, because we are a little bit light on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's get into it, Scott, because obviously we've got Aziz Beige, but he's at the tail end of his career, even though he showed
Yeah.
he's still well and truly up to it. I mean, between now and January is a long time, so hopefully he can at least maintain that. So we've got one left back, but I mean, outside of that, and Casey Boss is, it's pretty slim pickings, isn't it?
It is, and a lot of the options we do have are more right side than left side. I
Yeah,
mean, people like Keely Adamson's more of a right side player than a left sided player. I think Josh Rawlins is more of a right sided player than left. Maybe Jacob Italiano can do the reverse Geordie Boss and go over and play on that left hand side, but because Lewis Miller would then come in and play on the right. So that would give you those three options where it basically be Miller in, Boss out, but that would be one. There's not many other real options out there, unfortunately. I mean, look, Jacob Farrell is one who's at Portsmouth in the championship. He's not fit, and that's a real shame, because we know what a good player he is, and he could
yeah,
potentially fill in that sort of role. You mentioned Borges Rodriguez. I'd say Samuel Silvera, same sort of thing, more of an
yeah,
attacking minded
yeah.
option. There's not really anybody in the A League who's really lighting it up at the moment. Because the last 6 months screaming out they are a national team player. I'll throw one other name at you, and it's a little
Mm.
bit more of a left field one, more defensive. Kai Rolls. He
Yeah,
can
it
certainly
could
play on
be.
the left-hand side.
Mm.
He's a trusted player of Tony Popovich at 28 years of age, and he's the most unlucky footballer that we have at the moment. He's probably the one player who's cursing the meteoric rise of Lucas Herrington, 'cause that was his spot in
Yeah,
the World Cup, which
yeah.
unfortunately went to Lucas. So maybe Kai Rolls can get a bit of redemption and get into the Asia Cup squad playing as a left-sided player for us.
It's a good point, and, the other injury that we'll get into later could open up the door for him either as the left back or as a left-footed centre back option. But, yeah, you that's probably the one that Tony Popovich will take, particularly with his contract running down to the end of the Asian Cup. I get the feeling he might actually wanna try and win this thing, which means he's gonna take experienced players rather than youth players, but I mean, I could be reading the room wrong, but I think you
I
probably
very much agree with you on that. I was
yeah,
looking ahead and thinking which senior players should we say thank you and farewell to. And as his badge was at the top of that list for mine in terms of
yeah,
I thought we had the fullback thing covered, but now the injuries
no,
mean we will actually need him for that. But I do agree. I think Tony Popovich will take an experienced look to the Asia Cup, which might even bring in a Fran Karacic or a Cameron Elder as well. So both those guys could come back into the frame as experienced options as well. So we'll have to
yeah.
see what he does. But I do agree with you. I think experience will be something that he very much values. And if it is going to be the last rodeo for Tony Popovich in charge, you'll want to win it.
Yeah, for sure, and there we go, you've just found another left back option we've both completely overlooked in Callum Elder. I mean, again, it probably depends on how his body holds up. It seems to be a very problem position both on the left and right for Australia at the moment because lots of injuries. Frank Karasic, every time he gets called up, he seems to get injured somehow. I'm not sure what's going on. Jacob Farrell walks past a puff of wind and gets injured. So Johnny Katrumbis, he seems to get fit in patches. So yeah,
It's like we
lots
can
going
produce
on there,
one.
but let's
That
hope.
seems like the limit. We're allowed to produce
Yeah,
one at any one time. We had Brett Emerton, then it was Luke Wilkshire, then
yeah,
Ivan Franic, and it was Stan Lazaridis and then Scott Chipperfield and then David Carney. It
Yep.
was never multiple at once. It seems like we're allowed
Yep.
one per position and that's it, and they better stay healthy.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Luckily, a lot of those ones that you've mentioned were fairly durable, because, yeah, outside of that, it was yeah, it fell away, the depth, so, um, yes, that seems to be the way Australian football is at the moment, but the other injury I guess we should talk about is Cameron Burgess, who ruptured his Achilles in, Swansea's first I think it was their League Cup game from memory, so he's gonna miss the entire season, which is a real shame, and it opens up that centre-back spot for the Asian Cup. We talked about Kai Rolls, but there's a couple of younger names I wanted to throw at you, Scott, and your thoughts. Dylan Leonard at Schalke, of course, another one playing in a top 5 league, and Hayden Matthews there playing in Portsmouth. Anyone outside of those 2 and Kai Rolls that you see might challenge, or what are your thoughts on those 2 as well?
Well, they would be the most logical options. I mean, Hayden Matthews was there in the preliminary World Cup squad. He's a player that Tony
Mm,
Popovich certainly does like. So I can very much picture him being a part of that as well. And as you said, Kai Rolls and Dylan Leonard as well, 2 really good options. Again, we mentioned Gerwood Reich. He might be able to, if
mhm.
he can get himself called up between now and then, have an opportunity. I think Yanni Stenson, especially if he gets into
Yeah.
the Champions League, that's going to be a real opportunity. And I think there's a kid in Denmark. Is it Marcus Walker, one who's playing a
Mm.
semi-regularly for Nordsjælland? So there's some options there that you can consider, and there may be more than one spot available, of course, with the J League and with Jason Guerrier as well. So maybe there's multiple
Mm.
positions, but just on Cameron Burgess, I feel like this is a terrible shame because a lot of people are just rushing to move on from him because Lucas Herrington's come in and done so well. But as you've pointed out before, he played every minute basically for Swansea last year, and he was a crucial member of that side that qualified for the World Cup. And because what happened against US, which wasn't his finest game, it's fair to say, and he got subbed up to 45 minutes. It'd be a terrible shame if that's the last time we see him in the national team. I do hope he gets back and can overcome this. It's just going to be hard for him at 30 years of age to overcome this Achilles injury, but fingers crossed he can and can finish his career at the national team level on a more positive note because he's been a real solid contributor and there's still a lot there left for him to achieve at the national team level. So fingers crossed he can get back because he's a really good player.
Yeah, I completely agree, Scott. Absolutely terrible shame. He's a really, really underrated player in my opinion. Uh, that the fact that he's left-footed and is able his long ball is actually quite good and quite accurate, and it's such a important weapon in the modern game where we're seeing those compact defenses. To have a player that's able to ping those sort of diagonal balls that he does is such a key out ball and a key tactic that can be used. So, as you said, hopefully the Swansea medical department is really good and can get him back up and going soon because we'd love to see him in the green and gold again. As I said, very underrated player, very good player, and so hopefully, yeah, he can get back to that level because he was so crucial for them in the championship last season as well. So, yes, some interesting players as well that could take his place. I think Dylan Leonard is the one to watch for me. If it's not this Asian Cup, I think it's the qualification campaign. He looks a real player.
He
Schalke
feels like
did
one
you?
who we'll see called up for the Brazil series, doesn't he? That feels like
Yeah,
one you think's definitely going to happen.
I think so, yeah, and Schalke did experiment with him a little bit, playing him in a holding midfield role as he was building his minutes at the back end of last season, so that should be quite an interesting one. But, Scott, I'm gonna ask you, who you're most looking forward to seeing in these, European leagues coming up? I mean, we've got, the French league kicking off this weekend, Premier League, of course, the Portuguese league is underway. Anyone in Bundesliga next weekend, I believe. So, anyone in particular?
Well, I will be keeping tabs on the European leagues more than I have been in the past, given we are seeing more and more Australians playing at good levels over there. I'm going to be watching Irankunda closely, but forgive me for being a little bit biased here. I'm going to be
Mm,
keeping an eye on the Premier League and
yeah.
Lucas Harrington, not just because he's playing against my club this weekend, but to see what he's done in the last 2 years from playing in the NPL here in Queensland to be now going to make his debut at home to Man United this weekend, that's going to be one that I'm very intrigued to see. I expect him to go really well, and part of me wants him to keep a clean sheet as well. That would just be a remarkable thing. And it'd be very on brand for Man United to drop points to a team like Hull on the opening day of the season. So if that happens, at least I can console myself with Lucas Herrington playing really well. So I'll be keeping an eye on how he goes over there in the
Yeah.
English Premier League.
Yeah, fair. And look, I think the only time it's acceptable to have some split loyalties there as a football fan, right? To have something like that. For me, I think I'm really intrigued to see how Patrick Beach does at Troyes and whether he actually wins that number one spot from the off. That's the big one for me. But I think the one that no one's really talking about and the one that gets me a little bit more excited. Obviously, we've got Nestory at Sporting, we've got Circati at Benfica, but I'm really looking forward to see how Paul Okonengsler goes at Cologne.
I'm glad
I
you brought that one up.
think I think he is a Bundesliga player to a T. I think he is going to fit in perfectly at Cologne, and I will not be surprised if he makes a move to someone like a Leverkusen or a maybe not. Yeah, look, I'm going to throw Dortmund's name in the ring.
It'd be fantastic if he could. And look, his
Yeah.
rise has been sensational. And
Mm.
the role he's going to play for Australia in the next decade in that midfield where it's going to be on him to dictate the game for the Socceroos, getting on the ball, making things happen. Bundesliga is perfect for him to develop those skills. And Cologne's a pretty good team as well. So I'm very excited for him as well. I should have included him, but he might be third on my list to keep an eye on after Lucas and Nestory.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Nestory is going to be box office, but we're going to have to find a way to watch Portuguese league games to do so. But
I'm told
yeah,
they're very hard to find, so fingers crossed
yeah,
one of the networks can pick it up. I'm not sure who. I don't really care who, but
yeah.
someone please pick it up.
Yeah, please. Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, I just had to bring up Paul Ocon. I just think, and funnily enough, linking it back to Portugal, a player that spent time in Portugal for the Benfica B side. That's where Sydney picked him up. So a lot of those teams in Portugal and Spain, just for anyone that's curious, they do have B teams which they play in usually the second or the third division, but can't get promoted to the top flight, which is basically a reserve team, isn't it? It's made up of their
Yeah,
youth teams
a few Aussies
and
have been there as
mm,
well in that B team as well. I think Casper Tafter
cool.
was there way back in the day.
Yeah, yeah,
Anthony Carter was there, who's been floating
yes,
around in Portugal for a long period of time, was there at
yeah.
one stage as well. So, and Paul Ocon, as you said, was there. So a few Aussies have been there in the B team. Now we can see Circati in the senior team.
Yeah, which is just going to be incredible. I'm really looking forward to this season. Just there's so many stories that we're going to see come out and players, and we've still got another week or two of the transfer window, so we've got some more stories. Of course, maybe we'll end it on a Mo Toure rumours. There's plenty on Mo Toure potentially leaving Norwich, which is interesting considering he hit the ground running, but a move in the offing straight away. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
I think it's a really interesting one for him. If he's going to move, it should be to a place where he's going to play every single game because at least at
Yeah,
Norwich, he's their first choice number 9. He's going to play for a really good championship side, which could very well end up being promoted to the Premier League in their own right. So
yeah,
if he's going to move, it better be the right move for him, not just moving for the sake of it and sitting on the bench. So for him, I'd make sure, like the other guys did, make sure it is the right move. But you also got the Harry Sutar move potentially if
yeah.
that comes through to Wrexham, and who knows, there might be another young phenom from Australia heading to the MLS in a Con. So we'll see. There's a lot to keep
Mm.
an eye on in the last couple of weeks of the window, which has already been a transformative one for Australia, to say the least.
Yeah, an absolute blockbuster, hasn't it? So yeah, look, keep your eye out. I'll try and do my best to update you on social media, as I'm sure Scott will once he gets his hands on the Brisbane Football Review social pages. But
I'm
look, I
fighting
think
Adam for them as we speak.
yeah, yeah. So we'll we might televise that boxing match if you're lucky. But anyway, before we get into any more hijinks, that is it for the Aussie Football Passport. There we go. I was trying to do another mix up of the names. There we go. Jeez, has it been that long? No, long day. Anyway, look, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'll certainly try and bring you some more bonus episodes like this as the transfer window wraps up. Of course, we'll check in on our ladies overseas as well. I'll work on that one, but normal service will resume next week with a regular show. I'm going to update the format for you and I'll let you know about what that's going to sound like in the coming days. But uh, apart from all my rambling, thank you very much for joining me, Scott. Really appreciate you.
Pleasure as always, Alex.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott. And I will catch you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.